Coordinated. Episode 167. SSD. Other Accommodations.
Greetings, AP coordinators. I'm Garrett Cometa.
And I'm Rachel McBride, and you're listening to
Coordinated, the podcast for AP coordinators.
Thanks for joining the conversation, collaboration, and, of course, coordination.
Hello, Rachel.
Hello again, Derek.
Thanks for making the time once again to continue our conversation.
Of course.
We talked about some of the more common accommodations last week in episode 166, and there are even more.
Right. We covered extended time, extra breaks, extended breaks, and breaks as needed. And I'd say we needed a short break after chatting back and forth about all of those breaks. But alas, we're back, rested, and ready for more coordinated conversation.
And this episode, which happens to be the second in our 9-part mini-series about SSD, this episode, we're going to briefly chat about other accommodations that you may occasionally plan for when it comes to AP exam administration.
These are accommodations that AP coordinators may not be as familiar with. At least in my experience, I don't have students with the accommodations that we're going to talk about today on a regular basis. For example, I've never administered a Braille exam or an exam with a scribe, but this year I will. Perfect timing with this episode, Derek.
And while some accommodations are not as common, additional equipment or special format exam materials may be needed. And that means
planning ahead is so important. Speaking of, as the AP coordinator, I collaborate with my school's SSD coordinator on all of this. We come up with a plan to ensure that every student who is eligible to apply for accommodations has the opportunity. That always comes first. Students cannot take an exam with accommodations unless those specific accommodations are approved by College Board's SSD office. While the deadline for submitting an accommodations request was January 18th, schools are encouraged to still submit any requests after the deadline.
And so, what are some of these other accommodations that we've been alluding to?
Here is a list, and I'll preface the list by saying that the following accommodations can be tested in the standard testing room with other students. This is according to the SSD guidelines. Link in the show notes, of course. Okay, here we go. Large print exam book, large print or large block answer sheet, a non-electronic magnification device, also known as a magnifier, a printed copy of verbal instructions, food, drink, or medication, wheelchair accessibility, preferential seating, a student may be approved to record answers in the test book, a colored overlay, auditory amplification, and finally, a sign language interpreter for oral instructions.
There are other accommodations that require the student to be tested in a separate room. For instance, a student may have an approved accommodation for a reader or scribe. That requires an additional person in addition to the proctor. Another thing I just thought of, coordinators may need to order extra CDs for world language and or music theory. That's also applicable to the more common accommodations like extended time and extended breaks that we talked about in our last episode.
And please see the AP Coordinators Manual, Part 1, page 95, for more information on ordering additional master CDs.
Which brings up the point that some accommodations also require the AP coordinator to order special format exam materials. That is another related tangent, and stay tuned. It's part of an upcoming episode in our SSD mini series. Sorry, I had to get in a quick plug for the show there. So much to talk about and so much to think about and plan for.
And that's why I suggest spending a little quality time with my best friends, the AP Coordinator's Manual, Part 1 and Part 2. Review the types of accommodations and whether any of the exams you're administering with accommodations require special format exam materials that need to be ordered. The SSD guidelines is another must-read for specific information regarding administering these exams. And that's it, Derek. That was a pretty quick episode. We completed it without using any extended time. So I guess that means it's
I guess that means it's summary time. I'm ready. 1. Work with your SSD coordinator and plan ahead. Additional equipment or special format exam materials may be needed for some accommodations. 2. Unlike the accommodations we covered in our last episode, many of the accommodations we referenced today may be hosted in the same exam room as students without accommodations. And 3, Rachel kindly suggests starting a book club. on the list of books, the AP Coordinator's Manual Part 1, the AP Coordinator's Manual Part 2, and the SSD guidelines. It's sure to be the don't miss party of the year.
Absolutely. And speaking of don't miss, please don't miss our next episode where we'll talk in more detail about the process for submitting requests for accommodations. We'll talk with you soon.
Coordinated is presented by the AP Program and the AP Coordinator Experience team. We thank Jackie Ray for our theme song, Good as Gold. Jackie is a former AP Music Theory student at Oakton High School in Vienna, Virginia. Additional vocal support by myself, Carly Suge, AP Coordinator at Costa Mesa High School in Southern California.
AP Coordinators, we cannot say it enough. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We appreciate you, and for all your support of AP students, you are truly good as gold.
And maybe I just don't know. I'll say it over and over and over again till I believe it's so.